ladies and gentlemen, this is a modified version of the little circle that he was showing from before. I like using some of his terminology and then some of the Joseph Campbell terminology and then some of it that I've decided that this is here. So I'm going to walk us through this and then the thing that I would like people to do, there's a copy of an empty version of this on the attached on PowerSchool. And depending on whether you read the Quest for the Golden Fleece or your own hero myth, I'd like you to take a stab at seeing if you can chart out you can chart it out. But also we'll see where we're at in 11 minutes and whether or not I've actually finished explaining this successfully. Because if I've not, then we'll just cope and adjust. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if we start here with our happy little guy or happy little lady, he is living his happy life in the known world or in his ordinary world, basically ordinary life. Things are good. Then he, for some reason or another, gets a call. The thing is that call often takes the form of one of these little guys right here. Oh, wait, if I do this, we'll see how crazy this gets. All right, often nope, not even gonna try that. It makes me nervous. We're just gonna pretend that I didn't click anything on here. Okay. Often that call is mythologically one of like 4 different things. There's an absent father, although there's an absent father. It fits Percy Jackson really quite well. Something has been taken from the hero. Oh, Father Quest also hits Theseus, if you remember. Something has been taken from the hero or something taken from society. There is something missing. Like conspicuously, there's something to be achieved, or they can be assigned a test by somebody specifically, like go out and do this thing, sort of like Perseus. Sometimes an opportunity to be a hero just sort of presents itself, but one way or another, there is a call. Now, this funky little, now you can't see. This funky little circle out here says refuse the call. Sometimes heroes are like, nah, I'm good. That seems scary. I don't want to do the thing. And obviously, this little guy just stays at home in his ordinary world. What he misses out on in some ways, or she misses out on in some ways, is like the progression and then the returning at the somewhat higher level that Mr. Winkler in the TED Talk, but also Joseph Campbell kind of was saying about things. Somewhere between here and this next little bit, our person will run into a mentor. Because very much like with the love myths, where if there's a test that's assigned, there's also going to be a helper to make sure that they're successful, because the real test is accepting the test rather than just shying away from it. So, obviously Star Wars, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is like little Luke Skywalker's mentor I won't get into the new ones because number 1, I still haven't seen the last one, and number 2, I'll just keep rambling too long. But the mentor is there to kind of like fill in some of the little gaps that are going to be needed. They're also generally like along the ways helpers and guides and blah, 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 blah. But eventually they make their way into the unknown world or the special world, or basically like where you are stepping out into the unknown, like where you are going beyond the stuff that has been your ordinary life so far. And so kind of this dividing line being an actual threshold, but the interesting thing being a threshold guardian. So the threshold guardian, the person kind of who stops you from going into the outside world, has 2 functions. One, it is to keep you in the known world until you're ready, sort of. And then when you are ready, to to actually not be an obstacle anymore and sort of point you in the right direction. My favorite thing about the Theseus myth is that in one way, Theseus' threshold guardian was the giant rock, because it wasn't until he was strong enough to move the boulder over to retrieve, his father's things that he'd left from him, that he actually goes out on his own. So it kind of makes me happy. If we return to Star Wars, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen really are kind of the threshold guardians, keeping him at home on the farm. And then when he unfortunately comes and sees their charred remains, like that actually opens up the door for him to, oh, spoiler alert, sorry about that if you haven't seen it, that actually kind of allows him to leave in another way. Okay, then, so now they're in this unknown special world. Oh my gosh! Actually, if we think about Wesley, okay, we're never going to make it through this because I keep on thinking of fun things. If you think about Wesley and the Princess Bride, the moment where he kind of like walks out right after they share the kiss that our little guy finds so objectionable, that's him, Wesley, leaving out into the unknown. Now, in the unknown, there are a bunch of challenges and like tests and minor scraps and scrapes that the person is going to be taking care of. If you think about Theseus, again, he actually physically walks the most difficult route in order to get to where his father is, to sort of build up the skills. And really, that's what this little thing says here. They're almost like drills that you would do in a sporting thing, that they're building up the little skills that they're going to need for the bigger test coming along. Okay, then this is supposed to be a cave. One of the things that I don't love about the thing that they were telling you before is how they kind of stick to a clock thing a little bit too strongly. And so I don't know what number we're supposed to be on according to Clock Guy, but the reason that there's kind of like an approach and why that's different than the crisis, the abyss, the ordeal, whatever, is that it is when you have, like, when there really isn't any turning back. Now you are leading inexorably toward this thing that you've been assigned, right? And so then that is the approach, the moving into it, the all of this has been leading up to here, gets us to one of several different things that has been like the terminology sort of changes depending on who's talking about it. Here it's called the crisis, partly because that's a good plot ways. It's also been known as the ordeal or the abyss, the point of like no return, the do or do not, or the do or die moment. Now, or like the big monster, right? Now down here, we've got, if the hero kind of is not well enough equipped, there is basically death, or if we're not talking about it in a mythological context, but just sort of a human context, it really is like the falling apart or the breaking apart of self, or the shattering of the ego, or like dissolution. If you do not in the do or die moment, that's its own, well, basically, I guess coming back from that can be its own sort of hero's journey. But there may have been a little gift of the goddess somewhere around here that is also really important for you to be able to do the thing. Forgot about that. But it doesn't also necessarily have to be there. Now, in this big do or die moment, ideally, they don't fail, right? This is often where we end up with, if there's a goddess or a female figure and it's a male hero, often where the like falling in love happens. And then there's also this, they called it a result, sort of, or a, we can think of it in fairy tale as like a boon, but like it's the thing that is going to be brought back into the real world and help society. So it's not just like, guess what? There's a dead dragon. Although sometimes I guess it really is. But there's, it's the greater kind of positive outcome for other people. Now, sometimes you have this funky thing where the hero wants to stay in the magical world. Like they don't want to go back. They stay. And there's an interesting thing, almost like where Hercules, in the way that he is turned into a literal god, like he lives the rest of his life as an immortal, right? He doesn't go back and kind of, well, he's trying to die anyway. But there are also, if you think about Indiana Jones and the Temple, nope, just kidding. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the wanting, nope, I'm making it up. Feel like there's, never mind. Okay. Anyway, okay, so they've made it through the crisis, this ordeal, they've been successful. Well, along with that is actually like a growth, a transformation, whether it's Perseus kind of returning as a young man instead of a boy trying to please somebody. There's this is often when we get to the apotheosis as well. Again, I talked about that before, of the transformation from a human into its higher state to a God state, sort of. And then there's an atonement with the father phase that gets shown up a lot, especially obviously if we're on a father quest. But it's actually, you can look at it in two different ways. On the one hand, atonement with the father is really embracing the new hero status, or that new higher level status. And that's the kind of at one-ment. But then there's also this idea of the father being a mythological stand-in for like your purpose in life, your sense of like, oh, this is who I am, and I can take that on as like, this is now how I function in society. Like this is taking on the mantle of whatever that next level of you is, right? Accepting that challenge to live as this next higher version of yourself. Okay. Then there's a return, crossing back into ordinary life. You know, you're on the road home. Odysseus finally hits the shores of, oh, why did I start this without being able to remember Odysseus' island? Anyway, you know, and he's like, here I come back. Now, they called this Master of Two Worlds, or like the result. Basically, this little area is where you, this little starry happy thing is where kind of this fancy guy that you earned down here is shared with society. But basically you are living at this next level of yourself. And then basically you have the new status quo at a higher level. And then the thing about it is, like, Hercules goes through a couple of cycles in his whole myth, and Theseus kind of goes through a couple of cycles too, right? So sometimes there are, the longer and in one sense more realistic and messy somebody's life is, the more, you know, you don't just like finish one challenge and then you're like, that's it, I'm done, I'm complete as a human being. I have the attachment, that sideways document, on the PowerSchool page. And basically, whether you want to try like downloading it or typing into it or just mentally doing a thing, I would like you to see what happens if you, this would be easier if we were all in class and I could like hover around and kind of be like, great, or, oh, I don't know, answer questions. But I would like you to give it a try for, again, either the Quest for the Argonauts, Jason and the Golden Fleece, or if you read your own hero myth from one of the other little resources, and see if you can chart out that story on that circle. And also know that because it's like a greater pattern, not every super tiny detail is gonna fit, and they might skip some things. So I don't want you to tear your hair out or get really stressed out of being like, it doesn't fit. But I'd like you to do your best with that, and then we can reconvene on Monday. Does that sound good?
So is that all we have to do?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Because that can either be a really quick task, but it can also be a frustrating, and, you know, and like, what, where, who are you? You know, but yeah. So I just wanted to get the idea of the hero's journey cycle out to you guys.
Do we not have any work Friday? Or
Oh my God, I forgot that we do have work Friday. Just kidding. We'll reconvene on Friday.